Here is a question that I commonly get. What about organic grass-fed beef? People seem to think that it is much better for you than conventionally raised beef. There are a few grains of truth to this, but it is not the whole story. Here is something to keep in mind. The China study was a huge study done in rural China over a 3-year period back in the 1980s, when there was no factory farming with hormones and antibiotics or confined animal feeding operations. The animals in their diet were just naturally grass-fed, when being grass-fed per se wasn't even a thing. In fact, the consumption of animal products was so sparse there was no factory farming. So, with essentially pasture-fed, free-range, organic meat, powerful disease associations with animal food consumption were revealed. The greater the consumption of animal protein, the higher the rates of chronic disease, such as cancer. The associations were very strong, and at that time, the Chinese, on average, were consuming only 0.8% of their calories from animal protein. Meanwhile, Americans were consuming 10% of their calories from animal protein. Throw in the massive intake of processed junk food that Americans now consume, and it is no wonder that Americans are so sick and have to dump 20% of GDP into healthcare. I acknowledge that organic grass-fed beef has some advantages over conventionally raised factory farm beef. The absence of added hormones and antibiotics is certainly a good thing. Conventionally raised beef has added hormones like zeranol. Zeranol is a legal growth promoter used in the United States. It is banned in the European Union. Zeranol, aka Ralgro magnum, is given to cattle as a powerful form of estrogen. It is a known endocrine disruptor that is 100,000 times more powerful than the plastics chemical BPA. Zeranol is both powerful and persistent in the tissues of animals. If you dribble blood from a cow that has been raised on zeranol onto breast cancer cells in a petri dish, the rate of cancer growth is doubled. Tissue extract from zeranol-treated animals also enhances cancer growth. Zeranol can also transform normal breast cells into cancer cells within 21 days. That should be a concern for the typical U.S. female consuming conventionally raised meat on a daily basis. Obese women may be especially sensitive to the harmful effects of zeranol because the extra body fat raises the level of estrogen in the body, such that added zeranol may be more likely to induce a harmful effect. Antibiotics are commonly added to animal feed. Antibiotics cause the animals to gain weight much more quickly, which is good for agribusiness but may not be the best for us. The concern is that residues persist in the meat and get into our bodies. Antibiotics can disrupt the balance of various bacteria in our gut, leading to a wide array of health problems, such as the propensity to obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, neurological diseases, and more. Also, by eating grass-fed animals should be exposed to fewer organic pollutants, such as pesticides and herbicides, used to grow the crops for feeding conventionally raised animals. Another advantage of grass-fed beef is that since cattle are primarily designed to eat grass rather than things like corn and soybeans, the balance of fatty acids differs between conventionally and organic grass-fed meat, with the latter having more anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids and fewer pro-inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids. Grass-fed beef also tends to be leaner with less saturated fat. So those are all good things about grass-fed beef, with the net effect that it is less bad for you than conventionally raised beef. But being less bad for you does not mean that it is good for you. Grass-fed beef still carries a lot of baggage: too much saturated fat, heterocyclic amines, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, cholesterol, heme iron, TMAO, no fiber, no phytonutrients, and almost no antioxidants, and an unfavorable makeup of amino acids, too heavy on the aging and cancer-promoting sulfur-based amino acids like methionine, and also too heavy on the metabolically disrupting and diabetes-promoting branched-chain amino acids. Keep in mind that consuming grass-fed beef presents a lost opportunity to eat something much healthier, like legumes, whole grains, fruits, nuts, mushrooms, etc., all of which actively fight against diseases like cancer. So indeed, Grass-fed beef is less bad for you than conventional beef, but that doesn't mean that it's actually good for you. Sorry. There is another final consideration that should not be dismissed. The land use requirement for grass-fed beef is far greater than for conventionally raised meat. According to environmentalist George Monbiot, if all of the meat demand in the U.S. was to be met with grass-fed meat, every square inch of the contiguous 48 states would have to be converted to pasture for animals. That would mean tearing down all the buildings, cutting down all the trees, digging up all the roads. This is simply not feasible and would be an environmental catastrophe. If you found this interesting, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.